Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. President Biden is headed to Seattle. He'll be here on Friday to talk about clean energy and the economy. But it's hard to ignore the midterms just 6 months from now. NPR's Tamara Keith will get us up to speed on Biden's visit. But first, let's get you caught up. King County's top doctor doesn't recommend it, but you no longer have to wear a mask on public transit in the Seattle metro area. Buses, light rail, state ferries, and Amtrak trains are all mask optional as of yesterday. That follows a federal court ruling that the Transportation Security Administration's mask mandate overstepped its authority. The one place you'll still need to wear one is on international flights, including flights to Canada. City Attorney Ann Davison is promising to get through a huge backlog at her office by the end of the year, and she'll do it partly by dropping thousands of cases. Yesterday, Davison announced she won't prosecute close to 2,000 misdemeanor cases that were waiting when she took office. Instead, Davison says she'll focus on prosecuting more severe crimes like domestic violence, assault, and harassment. And we all know change is hard, but the Mariners have caused quite an uproar by replacing a ballpark staple. For more than 30 years, they've been playing Louie Louie during the seventh inning stretch. As of last weekend, the Kingsmen's 1963 hit is gone, and it's being replaced by Macklemore's Can't Hold Us. The head of the Mariners' marketing department told the Seattle Times he's well aware of the backlash, but the change was made after a listening tour about the fan experience, and this is the way it's going to be for now. Air Force One touches down in Seattle on Friday. President Biden is making his first trip to the city after a stop in Portland on Thursday. He's coming on Earth Day, and that is no coincidence. Biden will talk about clean energy and the economy. Of course, looming large in the background are next fall's midterm elections. NPR White House correspondent Tamara Keith is here to put it all in perspective for us. Hey, Tamara, really appreciate your time.
Hey, good to be with you.
So we don't get a lot of visits from the commander-in-chief here in the Pacific Northwest. And last time was actually Obama in 2016. And most of the time it is usually to raise money at a private fundraiser. Why is Biden actually coming out here all the way to Seattle?
Well, according to the White House, this is part of a broader effort that he's making to get out into the country. And obviously, Oregon and Washington are states that went for him in 2020. But also, in particular, the timing right now is that this is the spring recess for Congress. So members of Congress are back in their districts. And President Biden and the White House see this as an opportunity for him to go to people's districts with them and talk about the message that Democrats want to get out in this midterm election year.
Yeah, of course. That's super important. And like we talked about, looming in the background. And also, the administration says he's here to talk about clean energy economy and lowering costs for American families. What are we likely to hear from him about that?
Yeah, so lowering costs for American families, I think, is a phrase that you are going to hear a lot of as long as inflation is this red-hot concern facing the American public. It is a massive political liability for the president and for his party. It is a global phenomenon, but that doesn't mean that the president isn't expected to try to do something, anything about it. Now, when you talk about lowering costs for American families, my mind goes to the Build Back Better initiative, this legislation that is stalled in Congress that President Biden has been pushing for that would address things like prescription drug prices and child care costs and college costs and things like that. Now, that is stalled, and it's really not clear what the path is for getting something like that passed. The White House is, at this point, not even really talking about it. It's like we don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about talking to Congress. We don't talk about Joe Manchin. We don't that's the senator from West Virginia, the Democrat who basically sunk this thing. So they have been not talking about the fact that they have this problem, but what they are saying is that there are other things that they have done to lower costs for families. And so they are going to put an emphasis on that wherever the president goes. And that includes going to Seattle. And he is expected to talk about how in the infrastructure law, the thing that did pass, the bipartisan infrastructure package, that there is money in there to address climate change, to put in more electric vehicle charging stations, for instance. But that's the case that the White House is making, that the president he's going to come out there and talk about what they have done in addition to what they would like to do, which is, I think, where the real meat of many of the cost reduction strategies lies is in this legislation that's stalled.
Well, hopefully the president will not have to stop to fill up his motorcade at $5 a gallon here, Tamara, because that is the thing that is resonating with a lot of people around here, is the cost of gasoline and the cost of groceries. Inflation is just huge.
Yeah. And as I said, it is a political problem. When you have something that makes people upset every time they drive past a gas station, and, sure, the marginal cost increase is not that massive, but that is not a case that the White House can make. That $5, that sort of psychological barrier of crossing $4 a gallon, crossing $5 a gallon, that hurts. People feel it. It's real. If it takes you 2 gallons of gas to get to work and home again, that is like cutting into an hour of your work. So it is a real problem. One thing that they have done on a policy front that sort of is at crossways with the administration's environmental goals is they are allowing this E15, this ethanol blend of gas that normally goes away in the summer, to continue through the summer, which is cheaper, but it is not as good for the environment, which is why they typically phase it out during the summer.
Does the Biden administration offer any projections at this point on when people might feel some relief from some of this?
Well, the administration and also outside economists have talked about this moment being potentially, though, how do you know for sure that we are potentially as a country at peak inflation? That is, that it should get better from here. But they've been wrong before, and making economic predictions in the middle of a war occurring in Ukraine that is affecting gasoline supplies, making these predictions at a time when China is back in COVID-related lockdowns because of its zero COVID policy, though there is definitely not zero COVID there at this point. That's affecting supply chains. These are all things that are completely unpredictable and out of the hands of basically anyone. And those things could continue to feed inflation in ways that we can't predict.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the midterms.
Woo.
Democrats are looking to gain a couple of seats in the Senate to win a clear majority. They would love to extend the slim majority they have in the House and definitely not lose control of either the House or the Senate. We are a little more than 6 months away. So I don't know. In politics time, how far out are we really?
Well, certainly a lot can happen. That is for sure. And in reality, some of the redistricting is still happening in some states. There are still legal battles being fought over the congressional district lines. Where these lines are drawn can make a big difference in how the midterms turn out. As you say, Democrats have some sliver of hope that they could hang on to the Senate. I don't think a lot of people would be betting on it. And in the House, there is a widespread belief in the political world that Democrats are going to lose control of the House. Now, it is possible that the redistricting has turned out much more evenly divided and far less slanted than perhaps you would expect, largely due to very aggressive gerrymandering done by Democrats and Republicans that's sort of offsetting each other depending on the state. So making predictions is a very perilous thing to do. But the dynamics do not favor Democrats. And what I mean by that is that just traditionally, there have been a couple of exceptions in modern history, but traditionally, the party of the president in power does very poorly in the midterms. And add to that this president while, he is still relatively popular among Democrats, he is really in the basement in terms of his overall approval rating. And approval of the president does roll downhill to members of his party who are running for re-election or running for office for the first time. So the sheer political dynamics, the fundamentals, are like bright red warning signals for Democrats, which is why Democrats are pushing hard to try to get more accomplishments to point to. They want to be able to say, look, we lowered prescription drug prices. Right now, they can't say that.
Yeah. Elizabeth Warren just wrote a New York Times op-ed about Biden needing to go bigger if he was planning to secure any elections for Democrats during the midterm. I wonder then, are local candidates likely to get a bump from Biden's visit if he's not really a popular president and we're not looking so positive for the midterms right now? What can he do?
Well, the White House has not yet, they will eventually, but they have not yet announced which local candidates, which local politicians will be appearing with the president when he makes this trip. So we can't read into those tea leaves yet, but sometimes that is revealing who shows up and who doesn't. Typically, people want to be seen with the president of the United States, whether he's unpopular or not. And the thing is that, when you talk about approval, his overall approval is not great, in large part because Republicans really intensely don't like him, and Democratic approval is not particularly intense. It's sort of a mixed bag. But arguably, on the West Coast, he is better received than he is in some other parts of America.
All right. That's solid and qualified, Tamara Keith. Thanks so much for your reporting. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Tamara Keith is a White House correspondent for NPR. Thanks for listening. Jenny Cecil Moore produced today's show. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.